G'day guys, Josh here. I thought I'd do a video on this because, a lot of the meta builds for Druid, Necro, Barbarian, and Rogue have been going very, very well. And there's been one class that has lagged behind. I don't like doing tier lists as per se, but I really want to go into a deep dive of why Sorcerer and Sorceresses, respectively, are struggling currently. And, it can come back to the four tenets, as I said before. Does the build synergize well? Does it do enough damage? Does it clear the map quickly? And can it take hits? Can it take hits defensively? And we'll go through each of them on, what's the main tenets that are lacking Sorceresses behind at the moment. Now, we'll go quickly first through the first few tenets, in particular being the damage and the speed clear. Sorcerers have a giant amount of AoE and a giant amount of damage where they can clear the map very, very quickly. And also, the builds synergize well with each other, as you can use the enchantments and various other legendaries to make your damage a lot more. I mean, the Ice Shards build is very popular at the moment. Also, the Hydra build as well is quite popular as well, and they synergize very, very well. The main tenet that it does fall down is in the defensive aspect. So the Sorcerer's main defensive aspects has been resistances and barriers. And resistances are currently underpowered at the moment, being changed in Season 2, and barriers can only guard as much as your own base HP, not to your max HP. So it doesn't matter how much HP you get, your barrier stays at a certain amount. And the main factor of increasing your resistances has been coming from intellect, which is the sorcerer's main stat, or sorcerer's main stat. And this has led to the biggest issue with its defenses. So can it take a hit if it needs to? And the answer is no. He can't take a hit at all. You have to play absolutely perfect. And you can't even take incidental damage either, damage that you can't avoid. So you have to immune that as well, which has led to a lot of builds where sorceresses have to run, one or two attack skills and 4 defensive skills. Just like the OG Diablo 3 days with any melee class in Inferno, where you had to run pure defense, otherwise you weren't getting anywhere, basically. Now, the reason why these two stats are particularly weak, resistances and barriers being the weakest stat, is one, resistances don't function very well. In fact, they do, I think it's 1/16 of 1 damage reduction, okay? Which is really, really bad. Just FYI, I think it's 8 times less than armor at the moment as well, which has really, really hurt it overall. And given that it gets all its resistances from intellect, it doesn't help them at all. And as I said before, barrier is restricted to your base HP, which doesn't help them either, because they can't absorb all the damage, and also they can't reduce much of the damage because resistances are being useless as well. Now, first thing we got to do is take a look at their Paragon tree. Now, armor is currently the king defense stat up to a point where I think it's 80 or 70%, where once you hit that mark, that it just doesn't help you too much, or it's too hard to get that much armor, where basically your damage, you get 40% to all resistances by having 80% armor, 0.5 ratio. And for the Sorcerer, this is the reason why we're mentioning armor, is that the Sorcerer only has access to 1400 armor in their respective trees and respective boards. So they get less armor, and also, not to mention as well, less damage reduction in their boards compared to other classes. Hence, their defensive tenet goes down quite a bit, and the barrier, of course, the barrier has a limit, so it doesn't matter how much barrier generation they have, it's still stuck at that certain limit where they can even die for a barrier, basically, as well. So this has been a big struggle for Sorcerers as well, is that they have no access to the top defensive stat at the moment. Their defensive stats, in particular, they rely on, are pretty pathetic and useless at the moment. And it can only get fixed, after Season 2, not after Season 2, at Season 2, respectively. Now, another aspect, I did highlight that they have good enough damage and good enough clear time, but their damage also has another aspect as well, is that their damage, most of the damages for the Sorcerers and Sorcerers come from crowd control. So mob has to be crowd control before it does damage. It actually suffers the same weakness as Landslide Drew, where the mobs have to be CC'd or slowed, otherwise their damage does nothing. That's why Ice Shards has been more proposed, because Ice Shards, it doesn't matter too much about the CC, but that's another little aspect you have to consider of why the Sorceresses and Sorcerers are so weak. Now, you're going to be thinking, how do we make the Sorcerer and Sorceresses stronger? Well, unfortunately, that's not going to come this season. I mean, they can't really buff barriers to a point any further without, other classes getting heavily buffed as well. I mean, let's just say buffing the barriers to 200% max HP may help it out, but I'm not entirely too sure where that would go either. At least that would open up barrier generation as the slot for Sorceresses, because currently it isn't. The main reason why it isn't is because even if you have 50% barrier generation, if you go over your base HP, you can only go at your base HP. Let's just say, for example, your barrier does your entire health, but you got 50% extra. You don't get that 50% extra. It's a wasted stat, because you can only be at your base HP, basically, as well. I think one critical change could be done. It could be 200% of your base HP, maybe a bit more. Not entirely too sure how Sorcerers and Sorcerers will act. or be on that one. Alternatively, we can wait for resistances to be fixed as well, because resistances is currently a dead stat on Diablo. But my thoughts about the situation though is that Sorceresses and Sorcerers continue to be the weak class overall. They're going to have to go with really, really odd specs to try and do these level Nightmare 100 Nightmare dungeons and Uber Lilith. Maybe they'll get some extra defensive stuff from the Malignant Hearts coming in Season 1, but we'll just wait and see for that one as well to come up. But overall, there's definitely a big problem with Sorceresses at the moment, where they're effectively a glass cannon, but so much of a glass cannon that they can't defeat the upper echelons of content without, significant time being spent into it. And you can see like a lot of the Sorcerer stuff compared to a lot of the other classes, that they take hours on end to do content compared to like Druids, Barbs, and stuff like that as well. Anyways, you guys enjoyed my quick summary on why Sorcerers and Sorcerers are so weak, and explain in the context, using those 4 tenets to really get to basically that it's more of a defensive aspect than more of a damage and synergy aspect. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I hope you guys have a lovely day.